So with that in mind, I will have us start on our backs. You might find that having something like a blanket, for example, under the pelvis, or just anything to elevate it a little bit might be nice. I like to have a blanket that's just, partially folded. This might even be too high. Maybe more like that is a little bit nicer. So you could use a towel, anything, just to put underneath the pelvis. And we're specifically going to place it like under the sacrum so that it kind of follows that natural curve of the back. The flat part of the pelvis is resting on the prop if you choose to have one. But then the natural arc of the back is still unimpeded by that prop. And we can start here with hands on the belly. Maybe you even let your middle fingers just gently touch. Feet can be wide, knees knocked in toward each other. And eyes can start by being open. And we might take a moment as we're here to feel the breath as it expands in the belly. Maybe those fingers drift apart. And as we exhale, the fingers might find each other again. We might even notice the support of the mat beneath us. We have these 3 convex, meaning rounded out curves on the back side of the body. So there's the pelvic girdle. We can kind of feel that with the contact of the sacrum on the mat or on the prop. We have up toward the shoulders, where the arc of the back reverses, and we can feel that heavy on the mat. And then we have the back side of the head. And we can also, maybe even you take a moment to roll side to side, the head just gently. And we can feel that curve on the mat. And as we prepare to start moving, we might open up our peripheral vision and just notice here what we can see. What surrounds us in the room? What we maybe know is there that's just out of our range of vision. Maybe you're in a small room like me and basically everything is in your vision. But notice how it feels to stare straight up and yet be aware of all that's in the peripheral vision, to hold space for all of that. And you might like to leave the hands where they are, or it might feel okay to bring palms together and then press into that curve of the pelvis and lift the legs to where the knees are gently bent. And it doesn't matter how straight or bent the legs are. So just kind of arrive wherever feels best to you. And then we're going to bring the legs and the hands in opposite directions. So the toes maybe go down toward the mat and the fingers go above the head toward the mat or the floor. And then we can draw them back in toward each other. And then extend and draw in. And as we continue with this oscillation, you can play with letting the legs hover. You can play with kicking them out any amount. They can stay really bent, and this can be a really small motion. Maybe you only move hands and knees a few inches, and you're still getting that oscillation. Maybe you go a little bit wider. You might even play with gripping into the toes, almost like you're trying to hold a pencil along the bottom side of the toes. Like you're kind of curling those toes in to hold that imaginary pencil. And if you would like, you might play with straightening the legs. And maybe they straighten just on the elongation portion of it, and then they bend back in. Or maybe you keep the legs straight as you draw the legs up and down. But from here, let's again draw our attention to the backside of the body, those three curves, pelvis, shoulders, back of head. Become as heavy as you can in those areas. And in that way, we still those areas. We isolate the movement into the shoulders and the hips. And your body might want to speak to you right now. It might be making little pops and noises. And maybe that's fine. Maybe you just become aware of those. But if you would like to, you can also experiment with what range of motion quiets the body. And we can go ahead and bring the hands back to the belly, bring the feet back to the mat. Take a moment here, hands resting on the belly again, knees knocked in toward each other. And maybe you close the eyes, maybe you keep them open, but become aware of the breath. Imagine that there's a balloon within the ribs, and as you inhale, you can picture that balloon inflating evenly, front to back, side to side, top to bottom. And as you exhale, the balloon evenly draws in, front to back, side to side, top to bottom. This is what we'll call the radiant breath. And it's always available for us to return to at any time. And you might stay here, or we can again lift the legs. And this time the arms can stay where they are, hands on the belly, or they can come out to a T. But we're going to keep big toes, knees touching, and draw them in toward the left armpit, and then away from you through center, and then toward you at the right armpit. And you might notice that the pelvis is rocking quite a bit here. That's pretty normal. And this might feel like a really nice place to stay. Otherwise, if you'd like to, we can add in the arms. Imagine you're holding an exercise ball. And so that's why the knees have to kind of move away through the center. And the arms are actually going to move in the opposite direction. So you're carrying that ball to your right as your knees are to your left. And the knees move away and the arms move over and the legs move over. And we can kind of maintain this motion. Maybe you add the head in. The head would move in the same direction as the knees, rocking to one side and the other. And let's again become aware of those points on the backside of the body that can be really heavy, through the pelvis, through the shoulders, through the back of the head. And maybe you notice that that changes your experience of this movement a little bit. For me, sometimes it feels a little more stable when I suddenly become aware of those places, a little less balancey. And here, just like in the last one, we can always add in an extension of the legs. So maybe as the knees come to one side, the legs kick straight, and then we bend through center, legs kick straight to the other side, and so on. This can also be a straightening that we hold. And maybe we continue for 3, possibly for 2, and 1. Again, bring the feet down, bring the hands to the belly. This place of consistency that we can come back to. Again, a moment of rest might feel better to you than a moment of movement. But if movement feels okay, we're going to roll to the right side of the body. And you can cradle your head in your hand. You can also extend the arm and let the head rest on the tricep, bicep. Or you can even bend the elbow, but almost where your hand's like at the base of your head and you're resting on the arm. So those are all great options. We're going to plant the left foot behind us. All right, and it doesn't need to be super far behind us, just to a place where we have a little bit of stability from it. And then rock a little bit back, like lean back a little bit. All that's gonna do is bring more of the right side of the body to the mat. And then this right leg, it can be as straight or as bent as you want it to be. We're gonna lift it almost diagonally, thinking that it's like drawing toward left shoulder. And you might have to check in and kind of lean back again. Again, we're thinking of isolating this movement so that the whole right side of the body becomes really heavy on the mat. And this might feel like a great place to be. But if you want to add in some more shoulder work, we're going to add in the left hand. And so it's going to move in the opposite way. So as the right leg lifts, the left hand reaches in front of us. And as the right leg lowers, the left hand opens up behind us. And so we're moving in this kind of opposite motion. And again, check in with that leaning back. Check in with your breath. This might be multiple breaths per movement, or it might be multiple movements per breath. Maybe you line it up so it's one breath per movement. It's all good, whatever you prefer. Maybe you go for 3, 2, and 1. Return the right leg down to the mat. From here, we're going to roll over onto our backs. Take just a couple of breaths. And then we'll roll to the other side. So on the left side, and I'll pivot to face the camera. On the left side, same option as to what you want to do with your head. The right toes plant behind you, that whole foot plants, and we kind of lean back till we feel more solid contact with the left side on the mat. Left leg is as straight as you want it to be, and we lift it, thinking of drawing knee toward right shoulder. So it's a little bit of a diagonal lift. And again, if it feels of service to you, we can add in some of that movement of the shoulder. So right fingers are down as the left knee is lifted, and then lowering the leg, we open the arm. And know that the pace here is always a choice. This is a great time to, again, open up the peripheral vision. Maybe notice everything from the foot that's moving to the hand that's moving. Maybe you press down a little bit more through that right leg to steady the body, isolating the movement of these 2 specific limbs. And maybe we go for 3, 2, 1. And we'll roll back onto the back side of the body. Take a couple breaths here. Option to stay in this moment of pause, this moment of rest. Or we have the option to roll back to the right side. Same options with the head. Now this time we're going to do something a little funky. We'll bend the knees in a little bit more. And we'll lift the knees up and then lift the left knee off of the right. So the feet can stay planted on the mat as a little bit of a stabilizer, or the feet can lift. So we're in this kind of diamond shape with the right knee opening toward the mat, left knee opening toward the ceiling. Now, what we're gonna do here is lift this right knee like it's coming toward, sorry, this is left knee like it's coming toward the left armpit. So it's like crunching in on the side almost. All right. Now there's going to be another option to add in shoulder here. So we can start by bringing left fingertips to the top of the left shoulder. So we have this really bent elbow. And maybe we just add in some circling. Another option is to bring the arm up above. I like to hold the thumb against index fingernail and do these kind of oscillations, but let the movement start with the head of the shoulder. So it's like we're almost using the bones to get into the tissue here. And if you're rotating one direction, whether arm is straight or bent, switch directions. If you haven't taken a moment to notice how heavy the right side of the body can be on the mat here, maybe you take a moment to do that. Maybe we go for 3, possibly 2, and 1. Before we roll over to the back, let the right side, including the right leg, rest fully on the mat. Grab the left ankle with the left hand. As you draw that heel in toward the bum, think of kind of tucking the tail, driving the hips forward a little bit, and maybe you get a nice stretch through the left hip. A second option here is to let the left toes come down behind you, the left hands in front of you, and maybe reach out of the hip and continue that tucking of the tail. So both times we're just trying to open through the left hip flexor. So whichever of those provokes that sensation in a desirable way for you, do that. And then we can bring the legs back and roll back to the back side of the body, hands on the belly. 1 round, maybe 2, maybe 10 of radiant breath here. Even expansion, even contraction. Option to stay or option to roll over to the left side. Again, this time we find a little bit more of a tucked shape with the legs. We bring the knees up, open the knees away from each other. Maybe the feet hover up too. And then from here, we'll begin that kind of crunching in of the right knee toward the armpit. And if it feels okay, maybe we add in movement of the right shoulder. So fingertips on the shoulder to do some circles, getting into some of the more minor tissues, the muscles that we don't necessarily have as obvious of stretches for. Or maybe reaching the arm up straight above thumb to index fingernail and finding some oscillations here that kind of start with the head of the arm bone. We're almost like pivoting around that point. And if you have gone one direction, reverse to the other. Think of the left side being heavy. Maybe you go for 3, 2, and 1. Release down. Again, before we roll to the back, we'll take a moment to grab right ankle with right hand. Really hug that foot in toward the glute as you tuck the tail. Finding some opening sensation in the hip. Maybe we plant the foot behind us. Again, thinking of tucking the tail as that knee presses away. providing a stretch that comes from both directions. It's kind of what we're doing in either of these options. And as you feel ready, we'll come back to the back side of the body. Hands on the belly, knees in. We'll only do one more set of movements that are similar to what we've been doing. And I really want you to focus before we get there on the heaviness in those 3 curves at the back side of the body. Pelvis, the shoulders, the back of the head. Feel them grow very heavy on the mat. Option to keep the legs grounded. Or if you'd like to include the legs, we can lift them and spread them wide. And that might mean knees are bent, or it might mean that we straighten the legs out any amount. We can passively hang here, or we can keep some engagement in the legs, which might feel a little bit safer. We'll bring the hands out to the sides, hold thumb against index fingernail. And what we're gonna do is I like to anyway, on the exhale, draw those 2 circles that you made toward each other. And then inhale, think backs of the hands toward the ground. Exhale, thumbs and index toward each other. Exhale, backs of the hands toward the ground. So as you do this, and maybe you keep that breathing cycle, maybe you speed up the movement to where there's a couple movements per breath. But as you do this, really envision those 3 curves at the back, heavy on the mat. Feel how this movement is so isolated into the shoulders. Because at times, we let the spine's mobility take over for the shoulders. We compensate. And when we isolate the shoulders movements, we maybe get to work through some stuck spots. So maybe you continue for 3, perhaps for 2, and possibly for 1. Draw everything in, bring the knees into the chest, maybe even grab onto the knees with the hands and rock gently side to side. Now, if you do have a prop beneath you, let's bring the feet to the mat, press into it just enough to lift up the hips and slide the block or the prop out of the way. We're going to keep the hips lifted, but in this really low manner. So not in our traditional bridge where we're focusing on the back bend, but rather in this version where we can focus on some length in the spine. And our very final movement here is going to be similar to how we started. So the hands can be drawn toward each other at heart center. And we're going to reach hands behind us and then back down to heart center. Behind us into heart center. And again, this movement can be much smaller. We can kind of move just in the range of in front of the body. We can extend it maybe to the face, maybe we go behind us, but it's totally up to you. And the bottoms of the palms might come away from each other the more you move down, or you might focus on just finding that range of motion where the hands don't need to spread apart. Let the shoulders be heavy. Let the back of the head be heavy. Press evenly into your foundation, not with force, but with some stability. Until again, maybe you can picture how still so much of your body is. And you might even open your field of vision to watch your hands as they're moving up and down. And maybe you stay with this motion, but if the side to side felt a little more fruitful, we'll bring the hands back to how they were. Thumbs to index fingernails. And we're going to keep the left hand lifted, lower the right down. Watch it with your eyes as you draw it up touches the left, and then the left goes down, and then up, and then watch right. So only one arm is moving at a time. And it reminds me of those like desk toy things that existed really heavily for some reason in the 80s and 90s. And you would move one ball and it would clack into them and transfer energy and move the ball on the furthest side. Or if you moved two, it would move two, and so on. And so we're kind of doing that here. But again, we're remaining heavy through the shoulders, heavy through the back of the head. Noticing any sounds, any stickiness in the shoulders. For 3, 2, and 1. Draw the hands to the belly, lower the hips, let the knees fall in toward each other. From here, we're going to make our way up and over into a tabletop position. And that might mean rocking to one side and pressing up. It might mean grabbing onto the backs of the legs and kind of rocking up. Maybe you even find a little float here. From there, you can cross the ankles and rock over, or you can kind of work on finding this wide squat and then rocking over from there. We'll draw the toes together, keep the knees a little narrower than normal, more like hips distance apart, and then send the hips back into a child's pose. Let the head rest on the mat. Option to stay here, or option to move through what's almost a sun salutation, except we don't actually stand at any point. So what that might look like is as you exhale, you press into the knees, you round through the back, rocking forward almost toward a tabletop. And then inhale, lowering the pelvis to the mat, bending the elbows back, heart forward. Cobra pose. And then again, exhale to tuck the tail, round through the back, press away and back. This shortened child's pose. Take an inhale here. And then exhale to round all the way toward a plank. And then inhale, finding your back bend. All right, and those breathing cues are just an option. We're really just thinking of rounding and arcing through the back. So as long as you're doing that with attention, you're doing the entire thing we're looking for. We'll do 2 more full cycles of this, moving at whatever pace you're moving at. And when you finish your second cycle, we'll meet in just a normal tabletop pose. Hands underneath shoulders, knees beneath hips. All right, so we just took a nice long time to kind of warm up all of these subtler areas of the body. We're going to move into our main flow portion of class. So if at any point you feel like that more dynamic thing isn't working for you, please feel free to adjust in whatever way feels best. If you feel like you're ready to start moving a little bit more, we'll start by simply finding a downward facing dog. You might take a moment here to move in any way. Maybe just kind of explore wiggling any amount, just kind of scanning through the body, seeing what sensation exists. On an inhale, we'll lift the right leg up. Exhale, step it through. Lower the left knee, inhale. Exhale, left foot forward. Inhale, chair pose. A couple breaths here. Check that you can see the toes past the knees. Check that the knees aren't falling in toward each other or pulling away from each other. They're fairly neutral. Low ribs draw in toward hip points, keeping the core strong. And then on the exhale, we'll draw hands down to heart center. Left hand reaches forward, right hand reaches back. Find this open twist. Shift into the left foot, maybe gazing down at the feet. Lift the right leg up. Set it down. Shift into the right foot, lift the left foot up. And this time we're gonna step the left foot back, finding our twisted high lunge. Now, see if you can get that left glute to fire here. What do you have to do to get it involved? On the inhale, right hand sweeps forward. Maybe we watch that hand as it comes all the way forward and up, traditional high lunge. Exhale, left heel lowers, warrior two, toward the front edge of the mat. Think of opening through the hips, through the shoulders. On an exhale, we're going to cartwheel the hands down, plant them. Two options here. Option one, step back, potentially move through a vinyasa. Ultimately, we want the left foot forward, so you'd step the left foot forward. Option two, we have the right foot forward already. Slide it back toward the middle of the mat. Press into the hands, lift the left leg up, keeping that hip square down, the toes flexed. As you exhale and lean into the hands, pressing the mat away, maybe you start to work on hopping. And it can be just little baby hops. We keep the left leg lifted, we just bend the right, and then maybe heel kick. And maybe this progresses into a hop switch. The hop switch can happen low, okay? It can happen in a way that makes us in no way think we're gonna topple over. Or it can happen higher in the air, where maybe we even get a little hang time. Ultimately, we want left foot planted. Wherever you are, let that right foot lower behind you. Lower the knee, left hand, left knee. Inhale, right arm up. Anjaneyasana. Let the hips be heavy. Exhale, lower the hands down. We're gonna curl the right toes under, send the left foot all the way back and up. And on your exhale, bend the knee, open the hip. Option one, stay here. Option two, tip it over, finding your wild thing. Now all of us look down toward the right hand. Keep the left arm in close to the body. As you inhale, find a not high lunge, I don't know where I'm saying. Find a side plank. Maybe left toes on right calf. Maybe the left foot is extended. Look toward the right hand, bend the left knee, step it forward. Whew, nice. All right, let's walk the hands halfway to the right, facing the long edge of the mat. Both sets of toes point out, find some organic movement here. That can be anything. Movements in the arms, the legs, the head. Eventually, we'll end up bending halfway into both knees and bringing the torso upright. Finding goddess pose. Now, options here. We can hold thumb against index fingernail, let the back sides of the hands rest on the knee, and focus on really keeping a long spine. Almost like you're leaning back. There's like a slight tuck of the tail here. Option two is going to be to bring the hands to the back of the head. Option three is going to be to add movement. Maybe thinking right elbow, right knee. Maybe thinking left elbow, left knee. Potentially doing whatever you're doing for 3. 2, 1. On an inhale, come all the way up. And exhale, turn to the front of the mat, bring the hands down, step it back. Plank pose. Move through a vinyasa, skip a vinyasa, find something else. We'll all meet in a downward facing dog. Take a couple breaths here. Again, maybe finding movement or maybe finding stillness. And then we'll lift the left leg up. Exhale, step it through. Lower the right knee, inhale. Exhale, right foot forward, fold. Inhale, knees bend, chair pose. Take a moment. Same engagements as last time. See if you can scan through and remember them. Toes, low ribs. On an exhale, hands come down to heart center. Right hand reaches forward, left hand reaches back. Open twist. Shift into the right foot, lift the left foot up. Lower that foot. Shift into the left, lift the right leg up. Step it back. Finding your twisted high lunge. Fire that right glute this time, try to find it. Inhale, sweep all the way forward and up, traditional high lunge. One more breath here. Exhale, open up, warrior 2. And notice what the tendency is here. For me, often it's like my right hip wants to hike up. So if I level out my hips, I automatically have to externally rotate my left femur a little bit more. But then I can open my shoulders easier. I can broaden through the collarbones a little bit more. On your exhale, cartwheel forward, plant the hands. Same options as last time. So option 1 is to step back, vinyasa, and step the right foot forward, left foot back. Option 2, slide the left foot back toward the center of the mat and lean into the hands, reaching the right leg up. Now keep that hip squared and keep those toes flexed as that leg reaches up. Little bend in the left knee. Exhale, maybe hop. And you might try a few. Eventually, we will want to hop switch. So again, that can be low or high. The more engaged the legs are, the more stability you'll have. As soon as the right foot is forward, lower the left toes. Right hand to right knee, inhale, left arm up. Anjaneyasana. Heavy hips. Heavy foundation. Exhale, bring the hands back to the mat. Right foot steps all the way back and up. 3-legged down dog. Bend the knee, open the hip. Stay here or tip it over. Finding wild thing. Kamakkarasana. Now, if you're a wild thing, or if you're not, we're gonna find side plank. All right, so if we're in wild thing, I like to bring my right arm in, step my toes to my calf, then reach the right arm up. Maybe the right leg extends. We can all bend the right knee, step it toward the hand at the front edge of the mat, crawl the hands halfway to the left and wiggle it out. Remembering that even though this is a leg intensive shape, we can add in wiggles of the wrists, the arms, the torso, the head. We'll eventually bend halfway into the knees. Bring the torso all the way up. Goddess pose. Same options as last time. It's a symmetrical shape, so you can take a different option than last time. Maybe you find something I didn't even cue, right? Just exploring through your body. Maybe you find shoulder circles while here. Wherever you are, we'll be there for 3, 2, 1. Straighten all the way up. Cartwheel it out toward the right foot at the front edge of the mat. Step it back. Move through a vinyasa. Skip a vinyasa. Find a different vinyasa than you did last time. Whatever works for you. On an inhale, right leg lifts. Exhale, draw that knee toward the chest. Plant the shin at the front edge of the mat as though setting up for pigeon, but keep the hips and the left knee lifted. Option 1 is going to be right here. You're really hinged forward, pressure is out of the hips. Think of dragging right hip back, left hip forward, tucking the tailbone down. That kind of locks everything into place. Maybe once you're there, you feel like you can crawl the hands back to the front shin, maintaining all those engagements. Maybe once you're there, you bring the hands back a little further. And if you are there and you feel like it would be supported by your body, you can lift the arms up, finding a full active pigeon. If you're lifted, lower the left knee. The hands are lifted, lower them down. And from here, option to move into whatever pigeon suits you. That can be lifted and bound. It can be lifted. It can be lowered completely forward. We don't have a lot of back bending, so if you're liking that sensation, then you might stay lifted. We haven't really done much internal rotation at the hip, so you can always do a frog leg with the left leg, smearing the palm on it so fingers point forward, elbow points back, to get that sensation in the hip, if it feels okay. It might feel really nice to compress a little bit more, release the low back, and let the body soften toward the mat. We're not here super long, so as we are here, find a couple deep cycles of breath. As you feel ready to move again, you can start by opening the eyes if they were closed, maybe crawling the hands back if the torso is lowered. Pressuring into the hands, I like to curl my left toes under and nudge the knee forward, creating space to lift up and back, downward dog. And take a moment. Notice the difference between left and right hips. Notice any other sensation in the body at this point. And as you feel ready, we'll inhale the left leg up. Exhale, shin forward. Again, that initial setup, but instead of dropping straight into pigeon, we take a moment to think left knee back, right hip forward. Tail tucks slightly. Maybe the hands come back to the front leg. Maybe they crawl back a little more, up the left thigh, maybe right hand on left heel. And right here, maybe you really feel your right glute firing to support you. And maybe it feels okay to bring the arms up. If the right knee is lifted, lower it. If the hands are lifted, lower them. And again, an option to move into any version of a pigeon that feels of service to your body at this point. And although we try to keep things pretty even in yoga, the body is not inherently even. So sometimes you might need something else on one side than you did on the other, and that is fine. Another thing that's often kind of thought in yoga is that we can't adjust once we're in a shape. We absolutely can. Maybe you need to adjust to find a little more comfort or ease. Maybe you need to adjust because there's something kind of wonky going on when you got into the shape. You need to move something around before you can settle. Maybe you try a variation and it just doesn't feel right. Honor whatever comes up. Trust that your body is communicating accurately to you. And follow where it guides. On your next inhale, again, begin to make your way up and out of the shape, whatever version you're in. We want to eventually make it back to a downward facing dog. And from there, we can again scan left to right. Notice how the body feels. To conclude this class, we're going to hop or walk to the front edge of the mat. Whatever you do, do so with intention. And then from here, we'll stand all the way up, inhaling one final time, finding length in the spine. And then exhale, reaching the hands forward as we send the hips back. Lowering gently down. Maybe there's a time where you want to reach back and lower with your hands. Or maybe you lower hand-free. We'll all come to a point where knees are lifted, feet are lifted. You can grab onto the back sides of the legs, draw the heart through, sitting up really tall. Option to stay here, option to bring the arms forward. If you feel supported to straighten out the legs, you can always do that. Holding here for just 3, 2, and 1. Option to grab onto the legs or not, but gently begin to lower back until the shoulders and the heels are still lifted for 3, 2, 1. Melt down to the mat. Scan through your body here. Maybe something like a supine twist feels nice, where you draw one knee across the body, straightening the other arm out. Maybe something like a happy baby or a plow pose. We did not do any inversions today or arm balances, at least inversions as they're traditionally thought of. Maybe not traditionally, maybe more modernly thought of. So if you want to do something like a headstand, forearm stand, handstand, other than our hops, we didn't have like a hold, and so that might feel nice. Maybe a different back bend, such as a full bridge, whereas we focused on length in the back at the start. Maybe you focus on curve in the back on this one. Maybe you find a full wheel. Maybe you settle straight into your Shavasana, your final shape of practice. Know that whatever you do, it's okay to explore. You know, the shape that you find doesn't need to have a known name. It doesn't need to be something that somebody has shown you or that you've seen people do. It can be anything. Sometimes at the end of class, it feels really nice to begin to slow down. Sometimes, though, we feel really energized and warmed up, and maybe our closing shape is something that's really challenging to us. So whatever seems to be calling to you, just allow for that curiosity to blossom, allow for that exploration to occur. And eventually you might find yourself in some sort of final resting shape, potentially with legs up a wall, potentially with legs extended, maybe with knees bent, feet on the mat, and knees knocked in toward each other. If you're moving into something that you need to be energized for today, then you might even find a seat that might feel most nourishing in this moment. Wherever you are, use an exhale to release any holding. Through the ankles, the thighs, the hips, the wrists, the shoulders, the lungs, the pelvis, the eyes, the jaw, even the tongue. As we settle into this moment of stillness, feel as though you are the observer here. You're in this body, but you are not this body. You have these thoughts, but you are not these thoughts. Notice if you've re-engaged in any holding. If there's anywhere that could be a little softer. Notice if you have been swept away by a thought or a bodily sensation. And without holding any judgment for that, just reestablish yourself with a little bit of distance between yourself and those entities. Allow your next exhale to be a little more full. And your next inhale to be a little deeper. And maybe you continue with this deeper breathing, maybe adding in little wiggles or movements. Maybe on one of those deep inhales, you even reach the arms overhead, finding a full body stretch. Exhaling through the mouth as you let it go. From here, you always have the option to roll to one side, or maybe to actively tuck the tail as you draw the knees in. And take a moment to notice which side you'd like to roll onto. or to notice if it would feel better to grab onto the backs of the legs and roll up to a seat that way. As we find this final form of class, let's inhale the arms up and out to the sides, palms touching overhead. Exhaling, thumbs pause at the forehead, the seat of our intuition. Pause at the mouth, acknowledging this breath. And come to rest at heart center. We're here, we maybe offer a little thanks toward this physical body, toward anything that arose within this practice that was of service to us. And also toward ourselves for taking the time, the space, the energy to show up in this way for ourselves today. Namaste.